I think at some point, many of us have wondered what it would be like to abandon all of our responsibilities to go on an all expense paid trip to party on a private island with a billionaire. It seems like it should be a veritable paradise, depending, of course, on who the billionaire was. And if things start to feel a bit sketchy, just let someone know you're no longer comfortable by giving them the signal. Blink twice. I'm Ronald Young Jr., and I'm leaving the theater. All right, this is Ronald, and I am leaving the theater after seeing Blink Twice. Blink Twice, written by Zoe Kravitz and E.T. Feigenbaum, directed by Zoe Kravitz, starring Naomi Ackie, Channing Tatum, Christian Slater, Simon Rex, Adria Arjona, Kyle MacLachlan, Haley Joel Osment, Geena Davis, and Alia Shawkat. As usual, for a complete cast listing, you could go to the link in our show notes. I am not here alone. Mm-mm. I've spent a little bit of time alone these last couple of weeks, but this week, I got a friend with me.
Yeah.
I am here with
JC Howard. I'm back.
He's back. He was never banished.
Is that like a rumor that started or something like that? Like I got kicked off the show or something like that?
Well, Nick Hill.
She's gonna cancel me. Yeah, I'm too hot for podcasts, I think.
She's been working really hard to get you put off the show. This is something I'm entering officially into leaving the theater lore. Your nemesis, honestly, Nick Hill, who you only recently met.
Right. Yes. Yeah. It's not often that you are such cold enemies with someone and had never met them, but
Yeah. It's actually awkward for me, to be honest with you. We saw the movie Blink Twice, which is a movie we mentioned by Zoe Kravitz, and it is about a group of people who are going to an island which is owned by Channing Tatum. They're going for a bunch of debauchery and fun. They're invited there, and as they're there, mysterious things start to happen to them, and the movie is kind of uncovering what this mystery is, and it comes to a very climactic end, albeit very violent as well, which is something I think is worth noting in this review. JC Howard, what did you think of this movie? And actually, let me just set a little bit more. Naomi Ackie and Alia Shawkat are two young people who are kind of struggling with their finances and they're invited to this island that Channing Tatum owns. Channing Tatum is a billionaire in the movie, so that's important to know. And they're all at this island with some people that they just met, having a good time, doing drugs, hanging out, and then everything else I just said ensues. JC Howard, what did you think of this movie?
Zoe Kravitz is in her bag. I love this movie. I should, with an asterisk of this movie was unsettling in a lot of ways. It's thrilling. It is a thriller. But the thing about it is there are breadcrumbs throughout this movie that are ultimately satisfying. And to me, for someone, this movie, as you said, was written by Zoe Kravitz, directed by Zoe Kravitz. So her first time. It's her first time doing either of those things. And to have all of those breadcrumbs very satisfyingly wrapped up. It's not a long movie. It's an hour
49.
Hour 49. I think the first maybe 40 minutes could be shrunk down a little bit. You could push that down. But once this thing gets going, it has legs. I would describe it as a mix between Get Out, and just hear me out here, a mix between Get Out, Barbie, and Django Unchained. So it's got a little. I won't go too deep into why I say those things, but it has some elements. If you think about some of the setup of Get Out, if you think about the revenge fantasy of Django Unchained, and you think about some of the female empowerment speech of Barbie, there are elements throughout, but loved it.
I agree. I think this is a good movie. I would say that I agree with the Get Out reference. Our dear colleague Stephen Thompson just mentioned Don't Worry Darling as we walked out. I think that was a good one. And I said Get Out and Stepford Wives. I think those two mixed together is like, it really, really nails down in the middle, like exactly kind of like the two vibes that I think are happening in this film, with the aesthetic of kind of bodies, the curdled party, as Stephen Thompson once again said as we walked out, which I think is an excellent description of this. I think you're right. In the beginning, the first 40 to 45 minutes, it doesn't drag, but it gets to a point where I'm like, no, we get it.
Yeah, we got it.
We get it. So move to the next, move on. And I think, and I think I'm wondering if upon a second watch, I would think that I would be watching it differently, because I'd be knowing what's coming and I'd be observing more, seeing like how many of these breadcrumbs were left, because there's a bunch of movies, like Get Out is one of them, that treats you every time you watch it, or like any Christopher Nolan movie, the more you watch it, the more he like gives you little nuggets that you might have missed the first time through. And I'm wondering if this movie did that, and I don't know if it did, and so it would make me say you probably couldn't tightened up on the first half of the movie.
Yes, yeah, no, I mean that is exactly my feeling. Like, you could just, I mean, I get why they did it. Like, there was, again, without giving too much away, there was a repetition about that first, probably, I guess, 30, 40 minutes that was intentional. And they did it for a reason to, like, and like, there was even a point where your main character, Frida, asks, like, do you know what day it is? Because, of course, they've been partying. They're just, like, partying. One day kind of bleeds over into the next. And so there's that reason that they want you to kind of feel like they've been here, and even as an audience member, like, if it were too short, you would say as an audience member, like, no, I can tell you it's been like 4 days, it's been 5 days, it's been whatever it's been. But there's such a repetition about it, and they kind of are lingering in this moment for so long that even as an audience member, you are like, wait, how long have we been doing this? And I think in some ways that it is kind of a disservice to the movie, even still. Like, I think it still could have been a little bit tighter for that reason, but I do understand that that's why they did it.
I think I understand the repetition. Like, that's not, like, it's not the repetition that bothers me. It was the length of time. Like, I think it was just, because we do know that there is probably a too short day in which they could have done it, but we also know there was too long because it was too long. Yeah. So I would say, like, maybe if they cut it down by maybe 10 minutes and get us to where they were going anyway, it would have been perfectly fine. This is a movie I think could have been accomplished probably in 90 minutes, honestly. And it's only over by 19, which is perfectly fine. And that doesn't take away from it. What I do want to get into is one of the big reveals is done through a lot of violence against women. And that might be kind of a spoiler, but I think it's important to say this, especially for women that are listening to the show and want to watch it. Like, there's lots of violence against women in this movie, and some of it's not necessarily as visceral or brutal as I've seen in some other things, not even as something like Game of Thrones, but it's hard enough that I remember as it happened that I started to turn towards this movie, and it did something I didn't like, which put the revenge in a way that, like, as an audience, you begin to root for it in a way that sometimes I don't like. I don't want to be rooting for someone to be brutally, like, to be brutalized, and I was in this movie because of the ways in which they were using violence. What did you think about the use of violence in this movie?
Okay, so it depends on which side of it, right? So as you said, the violence against women, obviously, okay. I'm going to say the most obvious thing, I stand against violence against women. So,
obviously, we both do.
Yes, so, so there is that. But aside from that, even just the use of it in the film, which it accomplishes a purpose. And they did kind of two different, like, kind of stepping away and examining, if you will, the violence against women. And I think they could have gone with just one. So that side of the violence, I think that there were, like, flashes, like literal flashes of it at one point, and I think that would have been enough. And at one point, they just kind of delve right into it, and they give you a little bit more of that, and I think that could have been completely done away with. So that part of the violence, it was a little bit over gratuitous. The other side of the violence, the actual revenge part, I mean, again, comparing it to Django Unchained and things like that, there are a lot of movies that you could compare that side of the violence to, and it kind of comes across as tame in comparison to some other movies. So that part of the violence, if you are kind of going into, so I didn't know it was a revenge kind of fantasy, if you will, but like I'm for her. I feel differently than you about that. Like, I'm totally for that kind of violence. Like, if you can show me a character that deserves being heinously beaten or murdered or whatever the case may be, then give it to them. Like, I want to see it happen.
I think that's kind of my problem. My problem is that when you, I wanted it in the movie because of what happened to them, but I think sometimes I've watched movies, including Django and other ones, where something so brutal has happened to the main character that I desire something bad to happen to whoever the perpetrator of the violence was. Whatever that happens, it never satisfies my bloodlust. It always, it definitely, it's like, yes, the person got what they deserved. They've gotten, it's been reversed upon them, that type of thing. But typically, whatever I felt, whatever tension I felt, however emotional I felt, the catharsis never matches. And also, I don't like that they are pushing me to crave violence as a form of catharsis when it comes to things like this, when I'm just like, I'd be happier, and maybe this is me just saying I'd be happier if y'all would just stop oppressing.
Yeah. You know, I mean, along those lines, I kind of wonder how you think, again, without giving too much away, kind of about the ending. If we can speak in kind of very general terms, even if we're talking about it in terms of violence and revenge, there's a point early on in the movie where one of the characters just says, surviving is how you win. And that comes into play at the end, right? Yes. Where you have survival being actually the victory here. Like, did that, because that survival, again, to speak kind of gingerly, that survival had less violence to it. It had less violence as an element. Did that change anything for you? That you got a little bit of that too, where you're like, okay, I wanted some bloodlust, and then I get survival as an answer to that.
You know, I think it while you were talking, a movie popped in my head and it left as quickly as it came in. It's back. Promising Young Woman. There's a movie called Promising Young Woman in which at the end of the movie, and this is, I've gotten into disagreements with people about this. The end of the movie is that the cops get called. Like, they call the cops and the retribution I
apologize for my audible eye roll there. Yeah.
But and the cops are the ones who solve the movie. I feel like this is one in which capitalism is dialed up as like kind of like the denouement of the movie. Mm-hmm. And I feel like looking at it, I'm just like, yeah, I know we're supposed to be like, yeah, that's right, girl, go ahead, get your bread. But there was a part of me that was also like, yeah, man, but like your friend is dead, and you remember everything that these people did to you. Yes. So like, is there really enough money to like really wash that out of your mind, or what exactly happens here? And she also had it comes with a cost, because it comes with the cost of her now being in this, like, you know, new situation with this person who is obviously reprehensible. So it's like, was that worth it? And I feel like the reason why I compared it to Promising Young Woman is because it's very unsatisfying when they say, and the thing that solves this is something that is real world oppressive, you know? Yeah.
I actually, to that point, I love the fact that they have that conversation in this movie about law enforcement, and the way that ends up going is like, that's not gonna help us. Like, correct. Yes. And I'm glad that you pointed that out. Yes. Law enforcement is not the answer to this situation. But I agree with you also in that the end is slightly less satisfying for me for that reason of like I found myself, and I don't know, like I don't even purport to know my own feelings about this in some ways, where like I do feel like I agree with you that bloodlust isn't exactly the answer, though that is what I kind of wanted. I wanted to see, like, yes, give me all the blood, give me Tarantino levels of blood. But like, so like, there's a part of me that's like, okay, yeah, like you shouldn't lean too heavily into that. But then this thing that they did kind of lean into of capitalism was just like, that's also not exactly satisfying. And I don't know exactly where I would have put it, but like, there's something unsettling about this movie, and I think that's in some ways, even the fact that I don't find the ending extremely satisfying, but I do find it satisfying. But I think that unsettling bit about it that makes me feel like I don't know if it was the right ending or not is like it gets to I think what this movie is about, which is this movie I feel like is meant to get people talking. I feel like this in a similar way that Get Out was, but like you're going to hear people talking about this movie, and you are going to be talking about this movie with your friends and parsing it out, and like even if you don't pick up different things on rewatches, you're going to be talking about this movie and seeing different perspectives, like seeing a female perspective, seeing a person of like different races perspective. There's a lot of it there, and I really can't wait to hear a lot of those conversations.
I agree, and I think maybe if the capitalism had been more of her separating herself from the people, as well as taking their capital, right. I think I probably would have felt differently. But to put yourself in the same room as these people as a form of like comeuppance, just that there's something that just uniquely not right about that. All of that being said, here on Leaving the Theater, we rate movies out of 5 stars, 3 being the repeat watching, sir. 3 being the repeat watch, yes. Sir. Yes. So tell me, out of 5 stars, what would you give this movie?
This is a solid, I'm going to say, 4.3. And I say solid because it blows past 4 to me. I mean, 3 again is the rewatch line, but I think 4 to me it signifies that it's like it's good. It's really good. And again, the movies that I compared it to, I think that those movies are very strong in their own ways. And the reason I give it that 0.3 above that 4 is because of the things that this movie brings, the things that this movie adds to those kinds of structures, those film structures that I think that, like, it was the solidarity, for instance. The solidarity, there's an air of solidarity about this film that I think I would have liked to see fleshed out a little bit more in Get Out, and that's something that you did see in Barbie, but like obviously Barbie is like bubblegum kind of thing. But anyway, all that to say, 4.3, solid 4.3. I really like this movie.
I give it a 4. I give it a solid 4. I think it's a great movie. I would definitely watch it again. I'm excited to read the think pieces about it that people are going to say. I'm excited to see, like, especially a black woman in this role, in this type of role, like especially doing things that you would not normally see black women be doing, like in terms of like the drugs that were used, the ways in which she was saying yes to things that we would be like, no, don't say yes to that, all that. But then like there was still something very empowering about where it goes, and the fact that she's able to kind of liberate herself eventually, which feels good to watch. So I give it a 4 of 5 stars.
Yeah.
And with that, Leaving the Theater is a production of Oh It's Big Ron Studios. I mixed this episode, and per usual, as I've been telling y'all over and over again, we are trying to build up our Patreon. I've been doing the mixing. I've been feeling good about doing that regularly. I've taken that task on, and it feels easy to do. And when I say easy, I mean like I've gotten into a routine that works for me, but it is still work. Recording, planning, booking guests, picking movies, going to the movies, all of that, it's part of my schedule. It's still a lot of work. And the way that we can alleviate that work or help me out a little bit is by joining in the Patreon. Podcasting is in a very tough time. So if you like the show, if you're a regular listener, if you want it to come out every week, helping us out is the best way to continue doing that. Even if you don't, the other things you can do is share with other people, subscribe, tell your little friends, tell more people, because we want to get the numbers up in order for us to make it on the lists, get into those exclusive critic events that I can't get into, like Deadpool and Wolverine or Barbie, that I had to pay for. I'm going on a tangent. The point is, join the Patreon, leavingthetheater.com. No, it's patreon.com/leavingthetheater, or go into the link in our show notes. Show art from Heather Wilder. Theme music by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. For more information about Blink Twice or JC Howard, check out our show notes. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, or Threads at Oh It's Big Ron. That's at OHITSBIGRON. You can find out more about this show and other Oh It's Big Ron Studios shows by following us on Instagram at Oh It's Big Ron Studios and on Twitter at Oh It's Big Ron Stu. That's STEW. Leaving the Theater will be back soon. Thanks for listening, and thanks for being on the show.
Surviving is how you win.